If a man have a stubborn and rebellious son, which will not obey the voice of his father or the voice of his mother, then shall his father and his mother lay hold on him, and bring him out unto the elders of his city. And they shall say unto the elders of his city, This our son is stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey our voice. He is a glutton and a drunkard. And all the men of his city shall stone him with stones, that he die. Well, if this is the kind of father that you're celebrating today, and you're still alive, then pick up the phone, because the show is starting now.
Woo! That's right, folks. Today is Father's Day, June 18th, 2023, and I am your host, Secular Rarity. And joining me today is the wonderful Tom Benson. What's up, man?
Good to be here with you on this fantastic Father's Day, SR.
Yeah.
Happy Father's Day.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like I'm having a little deja vu here. Did we do this on Talk Heathen not super long ago? I feel like this might be
the power combo. The people spoke, and we're receptive to it here at the ACA. Right. You give them what they want. So SR and Tom back together again.
You're welcome. And not only are you welcome for having such wonderful combination of hosts today, but also you're welcome because we are streaming on 3 different platforms simultaneously right now. We're actually on Twitch, this wonderful channel of YouTube that I'm watching, and on Twitter, you guys. So you can check us out on all 3 different platforms, which, by the way, I should probably tell you what this is. See, the Atheist Experience is a product of the Atheist Community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. All wonderful things, very much unlike that description of a father you were just reading about, Tom. Yeah, what was up with that? Where did you find that description, by the way?
This one was Deuteronomy.
Oh,
it was
gosh.
Deuteronomy, page 177.
Yeah.
I guess 19.
Ew. Yeah, that's gross.
There was a little more context on it, right?
Oh,
and
well, sure.
The world a difference on it.
Yeah.
But I wanted to make sure that we were speaking about how your parents treat you if they find that you're a drunkard or a glutton.
What do you think the context would have to be to make just murdering your child in public with stones like acceptable? You know, what exactly is that context? I'm sure there is a faithful believer in the Bible, a faithful Christian out there, or maybe a very devout Muslim, because I have heard that there are some things like that in the Quran as well, some really disgusting things. So if you think those books are holy and you think Tom and I are wrong, well, why not give us a call? Because we've got open lines, folks. So 512-991-9242, or from your computer at tiny.cc/call-AXP. We make it easy for you, folks. And again, like I said, we have some open lines and we've got time, so we want to get those calls in. But before we do that, you know, we've got to talk about last week's Share Your Experience. So if you're not familiar, this is what we do every week now. At the beginning of the show, we ask you a question, we give you a prompt, and we want you to type your best answer in the comments below. Not in the side chat, not in the live chat. That goes away after the show is done. Go down to those comments and type your favorite answer. So last week, we asked you, change one word or phrase of any Bible verse to change its meaning. And here are our top 3 answers. Number 3 from Josh Sheridan. My favorite change of verse, as our Father taught us. I think instead of as our Father taught us, that might be where that's going.
That's 2 words technically.
Yeah, you know, but I think it counts. We'll let it go. Don't worry, Josh. We will count that. So number 2, we've got George Pierce. They said change Genesis 1:1 to read once upon a time. I do like that. Instead of in the beginning, once upon a time. It's a much better.
Like 4 words.
It is. Well, we said phrase. We one word or one phrase.
All right.
Yeah,
all right. The people are probably piling up on me in the chat, and I deserve it. Sorry.
That's all right. And number 1 from Dick Iconic, we've got changing one word in Scripture. John 11:35. Jesus wanked. I think
Oh,
that's
heavens.
instead of Jesus wept. That's really good. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is good. Although he could have done both. We don't know. We don't know what Jesus was into.
Translation error.
That's right. There's a translation error. Well, we have a new question for this week, folks. And remember, get those answers in the comments below the section. But I'm going to throw it to you first, Tom. So here's what we've got for next week. Complete this sentence. The reason Jesus hasn't returned is because he's been too busy. What? What has Jesus been doing to keep that second coming from happening, Tom?
My answer was getting ready. Jesus has been too busy getting ready.
Fixing his hair for like the last 2,000 years.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
We've all been there. Everybody else is ready. Get in the car, right? Father's Day. Speaking of which, right? Which one amongst you had that dad that was always, come on, let's get going. Let's get going in the car. And that's what Jesus is doing. Just taking his sweet dear time.
Sweet time. That's true. I was thinking the reason Jesus probably hasn't returned is he's been too busy finding all those parking spaces for people. Like, I don't know if you know this, Tom, but the amount of parking lots over the last 10 years has gone up by an insane amount worldwide. And it's really a difficult, complex system to keep track of where, free parking spaces are around the world. And with all these people praying for them all the time and getting them, it's Jesus. He's got a lot on his plate, honestly. Like, wow. I mean, little children dying from starvation, that's a lower tier than those parking spaces, I think. So, but yeah,
that not only is that inspirational, right? That consider it. People do that, but like, I think we might just started a SaaS company, right? Oh. There's probably a product already for this. Sorry.
There probably is. That's okay. We'll get back to that. Tom and I will work on this behind the scenes, and we will update you with that, folks. Although I'll be honest, we'll probably forget. But I gotta say, I am excited to see what our audience comes up with. I love that we do these. I think they are so much fun, and we often have just a ball laughing about, what the next one is. So again, folks, for this week, complete this sentence in the comments below. The reason Jesus hasn't returned is because he's been too busy blank. So fill in that blank for us. And maybe you will have your answer read next week. Well, I think it's about time we do the thing. What do you think, Tom? You think we should grab a call?
If there's anybody here who wants to talk to us, absolutely.
That's right, folks. And again, while we do have some good calls on the line already, we have more open lines. So 512-991-9242, or check us out online at tiny.cc/call-AXP, because Tom and I are here and we want to talk with you. And we're generally pretty good people, right? Don't you think, Tom? We're pretty chill.
Like, we're fun to talk to.
We are. We're fun. I like that. I'll take that. Well, we are going to keep that fun rolling, and we are going to go out to Louisiana, and we've got Catholic traditionalist, he, him pronouns, wants to talk to us about God. Hey, CT, you're hanging out with secular Rarity and Tom Benson.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, how you guys doing? Yeah, so how is it that there's not any God?
Are you asking me?
Yes, you're atheist, right?
Yeah, so my stance is that every God that has ever been laid out to me fails in some way, right? Whether it's just a logical contradiction or there's just no demonstration of particular attributes to accept. So what I would say to that is, what God do you think exists? And then we can talk about it. Because I'm assuming you don't think, like Vishnu is real, right?
Yeah, if I define God as all that you perceive to exist as being contingent upon that God that is the ultimate behind all that exists, and he is a mind, how is it that God does not exist in your atheistic worldview?
Well, there's a couple of things there. I'd also just real quick, and then I want to give it over to Tom so I don't just take the whole time with you, CT. But a couple of things there. One, atheistic worldview, I think, is kind of a misnomer, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to ascribe a single answer to all questions, and that I just don't really know anybody that does that. But I would say if you give me the description that you just gave me, my first response would just be, how does a mind exist without any other existence? How does a mind exist if you're saying it's the grounding and foundation for all of existence? You're saying before anything was, this mind was. How does that square? How does that work for you?
Yes. So with regards to existence itself, there's existence that is contingent upon other things. You agree with that, right?
Sure, but how do you get to a mind that's non-contingent? That's what I care about.
Right. Right. Because if you have the ultimate behind all that is, then it couldn't be contingent upon anything else because it would be ultimate. Do you agree with that?
Unfortunately, just real quick, CT, I want to make sure that we're focused so that Tom can jump in here in a second. Because this is, I'll just ask you this, see if we can get an answer on this real quick, and then I'll kick it over to him. My question is very specific. It's not about contingent or necessary things. I'll give it to you. There's a necessary thing. How are you getting to the conclusion that the necessary thing is a mind? That's the most important thing for me, I think, in what you just said.
Yes, because that is the definition that I'm putting forward with regards to God. So I'm saying that.
Okay, but if you just define things like that, does that have any relation to the real world around us? If I just define a cup as a car, does that have any relation to the real world around us? And is it important that our definitions have relations to the world around us? Two easy questions.
Well, do you believe in that God that I defined?
No.
Yeah.
Okay, why?
I mean,
God does not exist? Why do you not believe in that God?
Because you haven't given me any demonstration for a mind that exists before all other existence. But give me a sec. I want Tom to jump in here.
No, I mean, like the classic example is like, what are you? Would you consider yourself a non-astrologer?
No, I'm not an astrologer. So
no, a non-astrologer, right? Oh, you're atheist astrology. Like non-astrologer. Like,
yeah, since I'm not an astrologer, right? So since I'm not an astrologer, I would be a non-astrologer.
Okay, and tell me how you exist then by not believing in astrology, like by not understanding that Saturn and the moons and like all this shit affects our daily lives.
Yeah, because astrology would not be the ultimate behind all things. But with regards to what I just defined,
what if we define it that way?
Yeah, that it is what is behind all things.
I put forward as God. If I put forth this definition as God, you're claiming that you don't believe in that God, correct?
I mean, it's not a claim; it's a fact. I know what my own beliefs are. Okay, but this is really important. Is that we should when trying to understand the world around us, we should more or less play the same game. Okay. So if you, CT, get to say, well, I just define God as just being that thing that starts everything else. Cool. I define flippity floop that way. What's the differentiation between my thing and your thing? How do you get to accepting that your thing is real?
I can answer that. Sure, yeah. I can answer that. Because show me where flippity floop went ahead and revealed himself to you.
So you've got revelation. So you've got personal revelation. CT, hang on a second.
Hold on, I can show where the God that I...
We don't have to go any further. You've already given me the answer. And that's great, honestly, because I thought that's what you were going to say. I kind of assumed that you were going to say, well, I've got personal revelation for my thing, right? So I just make sure, because we don't need to go down another route here. You're saying the thing that differentiates your definition of just all the necessary stuff in the world versus my definition is that yours has been revealed to you. And I got you on mute, so just give it a second. I'll pull you back on. Just want to make sure we're on the same page. Okay, CT?
Yeah.
You're back on.
Can I be heard?
Yeah, you're back on.
Be heard?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no need to put me on mute because we can have a back and forth without you putting...
Well, I'm going to put you on mute again. And
this isn't a hostage scenario.
Yeah,
like, what
the reason that I'm going to put you on mute, CT, is because we only have a limited time, okay? And I want to actually get to your thoughts. I want to hear you describe your things and argue for them. But the problem is is if you're just going to ramble for 5 minutes when you answered my question, that's not going to be beneficial for anybody. It's not going to be a good conversation for either of us. So let's take a step back. And all I'm asking is just clarification to make sure that you and I are understanding the same thing. And it sounds like what you're saying is you gave this definition that applies to God, that is the ultimate grounding of all things. I gave this other definition that applies to another thing. Okay? You said the reason your thing is real is because of personal revelation. That's all I'm asking. Are we on the same page so far? And I'm going to unmute you in just a second, and you should be good to go now. Are we on the same page?
Because I never said personal revelation. So you're adding words to.
You said God was revealed to you.
What I
Is
said,
that not personal revelation? Did you say God was revealed to you?
No. Natural revelation is personal revelation. Now that is something that God did reveal, I believe. But there's other revelations that are not personal revelation, whereby
Let's
we
just
can
stick
know
with
that God
one.
exists.
Let's just stick with the one thing that differentiates the two definitions we've got on the table, okay? I've got my silly made up thing. You've got your thing that I'm also saying is made up. What's the thing that differentiates between them? Are you saying natural revelation?
Sure. So with regards to natural revelation is with regards to knowing that a God exists. Now, if you're going to claim that
stop right there. Stop right there.
Now, hold on. I'm talking.
No, because you already answered the question and now you're just going off on a different route. If you genuinely believe that natural revelation is the thing that differentiates between these two definitions, then cool, man. We don't need any other explanation. Let's actually hash out the conversation we're trying to have, okay? So, CT, what do you mean by natural revelation? That doesn't make sense to me, and I'd be willing to put $1 down that it probably doesn't make sense to Tom either.
I was going to ask you, like, for the folks at home, if anybody knows what that is,
let us know. Natural
know.
revelation? That's
what
we want to know.
CT, you're here. What is it?
Yeah, I didn't go ahead and say that natural. See, the thing is, you guys aren't listening to what I'm saying. I didn't say that natural revelation.
You know what? You're right. You're right, CT. I'm not listening. And
we're trying to listen really good. That's the problem. Like, we're listening super good. You're not listening, CT. Which that's okay. It's Happy Father's Day.
Yeah,
we're here.
Seriously, we're trying to have a good back and forth. Okay, and I understand that this isn't always the best format for things. Understandable. Okay, but please get me here. Okay. Tom and I did not come here today to just yell at people, right? We didn't come here today to just mute people repeatedly. But we also didn't come here today for somebody to just avoid the conversation that they called in to talk about. We didn't call you. We didn't reach out to you. Thank you so much for calling us. We're deeply, deeply happy to have you. But we actually have to talk about the thing that you want to talk about. So if you say a word or phrase that doesn't make sense, and Tom and I have no understanding of what you're talking about, we have to understand before we can proceed, okay? So instead of, when I pull you back on here in just a second, instead of you going, oh gosh, you guys are muting me all the time, blah, blah, blah. Instead of that, let's just go right to it. Hey folks, we got CT here from Louisiana, he, him, wants to say that the reason God exists is because of natural revelation. Hey, CT, you're on the show. What do you mean by natural revelation?
Okay, I didn't say what you said that I said. I didn't say that it is only by natural revelation that differentiates between the definition I gave of God in your flip.
Okay, fine, but what do you mean by natural revelation? Fine, it's not your only natural criteria. I don't think I said that, but what do you mean by that phrase? That is the important crux of what we're trying to get to.
Yes, natural revelation means that God has made it known to all mankind that he exists by writing it upon our conscience that he exists. That's what natural revelation is.
How do you show that? How do you demonstrate that?
By the fact that I know that God exists, and I've always known
I know God doesn't exist. So now I know God doesn't exist. We're in the exact same boat there. What's the differentiation between our two things here?
Well, how can you say that you know that God doesn't exist when you?
How
just
can you
said
say that you know
flippity
God
flip is the
exists when
ultimate-
it's not written on your consciousness?
Hold on. I didn't get my question out. Are you going to allow me to get my question out?
Sure, go ahead. I'm sure it'll be the thing I already
So
answered.
The
but
producers say we're supposed to give you a minute because of the whatever.
we could give you a
So-
minute. Would you
so
like
the
would you
thing
like
is-
a minute, CT? We'll give you a minute uninterrupted.
Okay.
Explain to the folks. Maybe we'll be
Okay.
persuaded.
All
Yeah.
right, we'll
so-
get that.
Okay, you're going to give me a minute. Great. You're not going to
Yep.
interrupt me.
We'll get that clock
put a
on the
timer
board
up.
here so
Okay.
that everybody can see it. Yeah, give it to us like we're 5 here, CT.
ELI
Okay.
5.
So with regard, tell me when to start.
Now,
And start.
Okay, so you just claimed that flippity floop is the ultimate behind of all of reality. Well, if that's the case, then flippity floop would be God if he is the ultimate behind all of reality. And apparently you know some kind of way that flippity floop is the ultimate. So that would mean that somehow flippity floop must have revealed it to you, unless you're just lying to everyone in your audience. You're lying to your audience. Now, with regards to the one true God, the definition that I gave, we have ontological intelligibility with regards to things themselves, the aboutness of things, the nature of being of things. They have characteristics. Characteristics involve the principles of logic. Logic involves a mind. It's an abstract. It's not a concrete. It's an abstract. So that would mean that even if human beings didn't exist, the universe itself would have existed, and the
Okay, finish with
characteristics
your
of
minute,
the
then
universe.
finish
with
up your
regards
thought.
so notice everyone that he interrupted me. So with
It was over a minute. I
characteristics
literally
of the
just said you
universe-
finished with your minute, but I'm going to let you finish your thought. Like, if you want to come on here and pretend like you're intelligent, that's fine. But like, I mean, literally it was on the screen. It was a full clock. Okay. Everything you've just said, CT, you could have saved yourself a lot of oxygen just by saying, I'm a presuppositionalist, you guys. That's it. That's all you have to do, because that's what you're describing. You're describing that you just presuppose the existence of God to ground all of these things. But the problem is, again, we're playing the same game and you're losing because you're presupposing more things than non-religious individuals presuppose. If I presuppose the laws of logic and you do too, and then you just go, well, I add this God thing underneath it, that's not a better argument, because now you have more to contend with later on down the line. You have to answer all of these objections that the God existence brings to you, and you still have all the problems with the foundations of logic. You haven't answered anything. And in that entire time, we gave you to give us some way, some demonstration whatsoever of your understanding of God being the ultimate, as you call it, which you also haven't defined, but I'll just give it to you. So again, do you have any way of demonstrating that your understanding of what that necessary thing is for all existence, do you have any way of demonstrating that your criteria is what adheres to that thing? Is there any way whatsoever? Or do you just presuppose it?
Yeah, notice, audience, that the host lied. They said they wouldn't go ahead and.
They can't hear us.
Notice, audience, that I'm not able to count backwards from 60 down to 0. But either way,
It's
the
okay.
point is, CT, look, I got you muted, and I'm going to let you go. And the reason I'm going to let you go is because I don't feel like you're really intending to have this conversation, which is frustrating, honestly, because we have other callers, and I don't want to waste the audience time. You know, Tom has given his wonderful time to come here and hang out with us, and I just don't want to bore everybody with somebody who refuses to take the opportunity given to give us some kind of demonstration. Honestly, like, Tom's not upset. I'm not upset. The problem is we've got somebody on the line right now who wants to tell me that they know something, and all I want is just show it to me. Just demonstrate it to me in any way at all. I'd take anything right now, CT, but you haven't done that for some reason. And I'm not positive if it's because you have learned enough about presuppositionalism to recognize that it's a bankrupt ideology, or if you just need to look further into presup. I mean, go look up Saitin Bruggencate then. Like, he's the presup extraordinaire. Go check all his stuff out and like sharpen your metal here, because what we've gotten so far has been you walking me through the first paragraph of somebody explaining presuppositionalism to me. And we're trying to get further on in that understanding, but I don't know that you have gotten there yet to formulate those ideas. So I really do. I want you to call back. I'd like to have this conversation with you, because I think there are some really, really glaring problems in presuppositionalism. I've heard J Mike talk about it a bunch, actually, by the way. So that being said, like I said, man, I'm letting you go because I just feel like you need a bit more substance here, because again, if somebody spends a few minutes explaining to you, like, there's this thing and it's like a metal kind of container, but inside of it there are seats and it's got like these round things on the bottom, and like, you know what I'm talking about? It goes vroom vroom sometimes, you know?
I call that an automobile.
Yeah, if somebody spends that long trying to explain to you a concept that is that simple and contained in a single word, I gotta say, hey, go back, look up some more stuff, please, and call us, because presuppositionalism is at least interesting when fully formulated. But again, I just think it's incredibly wrong.
I hope no one gets the false impression that this isn't one of those like do your homework type tasks.
No,
We don't want people doing, but there's a way you can access all the historical conversations here on the show, and that's by joining the Patreon. And by doing that, you could go find out the callers who have already asked the same question and get that answer, which isn't to say we don't want to, it has to be a new thing, but SR and I would love to talk to folks who we're going to have a conversation about it instead of,
yeah, because honestly,
listening.
we just didn't get very far, and I wanted to get far, but the problem was we were stuck right after the first explanation, because it's kind of like when I see people talking to Dr. Ben and they want to say something, oh, blah blah medicine this, and then Ben's like, yeah, but how does that actually work in the body? And they're like, oh, I don't know. And it's like, yeah, like maybe we need to, that's just it's a good reminder for us all to make sure that we are well versed on our thoughts and never stop learning. So, which, by the way, I'm gonna learn you something right here, folks. Okay, because you might not know about this, but I need everyone to pay attention, because there is going to be an extraordinary experience coming up. August 26th of 2023, the ACA's annual Bat Cruise is back. So join the atheist community of Austin for a fun summer evening on the water, conversing with like-minded free thinkers. You can meet Forrest Valkai, J Mike, and other hosts of the Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, and the Nonprofits. They'll be on board to mingle and chat throughout the 2-hour cruise around Lady Bird Lake. The cruise will pause at the Congress Avenue Bridge at sundown for the emergence of the world's largest urban bat colony. So get your tickets now at tiny.cc/batcruise. We like to make it easy for y'all, so that is the way to get there. I can tell you that when I went down to Austin not long ago, I got to see some of the bats come out. It is super worth it. It is really, really cool. And apparently, when I was there, they weren't even close to as big as they're going to be in August. So you guys, if you can get out there, definitely do it. It is a fun time.
Are they different kinds of bats, or is it because the bats bulk up during the summer months?
I think it has to do with like pregnant bats, honestly. I think it has to do with the fact that like the pregnant females come back sooner than the rest of the colony. But honestly, I genuinely don't know how many species of bats there are there. I don't know if it's 1 or if it's 12, but it is a lot of bats. Like it's an absurd amount of bats.
Get a fact check on that.
Yeah. We'll get the crew working on that. We'll get, but before we do that, I think we should probably take another call. What do you think?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
No,
I thought you're kind of like,
just kind of general. Yeah, no, I get you. I should be more clear about my rhetorical questions.
Yeah, you have to, Tom, this is what give me an answer. Let's
We're gonna
talk
go-
to the next one.
We're going to go down to Florida. We've got Jarrod, they, them, and it sounds like you've got a scientific method that proves a creator. That's awesome. You're talking with Tom and SR. What is up?
Hey guys, how you doing? Actually, I have
Good,
more
how
of
are
a
you?
proposition. I was hoping you guys could maybe shed a little light on it.
Yeah,
That
sure.
I'm a
Yeah,
theist.
well-
I don't really follow the mainstream religion at all. I think it's ridiculous. But is it possible that we could prove that we live in some type of matrix? Because if we could actually prove the coding, then that would stipulate a coder. Not saying that he's some good, loving being. That's all irrelevant.
Sure.
Maybe like an alien scientist of some sort.
So I guess, yeah,
Or
there's
geneticist.
a couple of things that come to my mind right away. The first one you kind of ended on with like this alien scientist thing. Like, does it get us to the classical theist God of the Bible? Like, probably not, just by itself, right? I don't think anything that we could do in that vein would get us to proving that version of a God, right? But maybe a different version of a God, like some higher dimensional creature. But then I'd probably quibble with you about, is that really God, or should we call that an extra dimensional creature? But more to what I think is kind of the thrust of what you're asking. I think the issue with it probably is something similar, like when people want to talk about like before the Big Bang, right? Or outside of space and time. If all of existence involves both space and time, I don't know how in this existence we could ever get any understanding of that other stuff, right? Because it seems that we're just like fundamentally barred from ever like actually observing it. Because if somehow we took no space, no time, and then brought it into this space and time, right? It wouldn't work, right? Like there seems to be just a literal logical contradiction there that has some problems. But let me see what Tom has to think on it as well, and then we'll kick it right back to you, Jarrod.
Yeah, no, I feel like SR from that same thing. Jarrod, follow along here, right? The big difference that it seems like theists and atheists have is that theists jump to some sort of conclusion once you get to that step where it's like, we'll never know. And SR and myself, we just kind of go there and say, we don't know. So I'm not going to waste any more energy supposing what I'd like it to be or not, right? I guess there's tons of things you could read. And like I was reading this earlier. My goodness. Have you ever read this thing? Absolute chaos. So I guess, yeah, go back to you, Jarrod. Where do you take it from there? If we could know, prove something like that.
But I guess what I'm calling is there a way to actually find out, like mathematically, with the scientific method, that we're in a construct? Because when that stipulate a coder, not saying that it's good or all that BS.
Right. This is what you just touched on. I think is something that's worthwhile because that kind of you said something, and I don't know if you were doing it consciously or not, but that's actually something that a lot of atheists will say. Like, for instance, on Talk Heathen earlier today, there was a caller who kept saying, well, there's this creation. Well, there's this creation. Well, there's this creation. Doesn't that imply a creator? Yeah, of course, because that's how we use those words, right? So if we are already assuming, right, that the matrix, quote unquote, let's say we discover it tomorrow somehow, Jarrod, I'm with you. Let's play the hypothetical. If we discover that tomorrow, by definition, if we just say, well, this is a creation, well, then, yeah, somebody had to create it. But if we discover the matrix tomorrow and we don't have any indication that it was, quote unquote, created, right? Like there is something called the Higgs field. And the Higgs field is essentially this grid system that just exists everywhere. And it seems to be the thing that tiny little bits of matter stick to. Now, I'm not a physicist. Please go look that up. Please go look up the Higgs field on your own, caller, like, because you will find much more information about it. But the question there, I think, still applies, which is, okay, so we found this Higgs field. Doesn't that mean it was created? Well, no. Like, how do we differentiate between this matrix just being how existence manifested, or somebody purposefully designing the matrix this way? Does that make sense? Kind of why I feel like
you're saying like an abiogenesis matrix of that sort.
I mean, yeah, abiogenesis is specifically about, like, you know, abiotic life becoming
like biology,
biotic.
right? I'm saying, like, but in a technical stance, abiogenesis matrix, like it essentially created stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I get where you're going there. I just would use a different term. So, like,
Okay.
For instance, because we have to get back to this place where we're now, you and I are in our heads, we're saying, okay, seems to be the case that at some point in time, way, way long ago, doesn't matter when, doesn't matter how, but a long freaking time ago, there was just like this point. And then supposedly it starts expanding, it gets bigger, it makes all the stuff we've got. Okay, cool. Well, what's before that point, right? That's what we're trying to understand right now. And I think one of the fundamental problems with that is we're trying to play this game of comparing something to nothing. But true nothingness has no characteristics. There is literally nothing you can say about it, because that's what true philosophical nothing is. So then we have to ask the question, has that ever been the case? Has there ever been a time, ever, where there was literally nothing, a concept that we can't even wrap our brains around? And I think what happens when we start asking ourselves those questions is we get to this place of going, well, yeah, that kind of doesn't actually make sense, right? Like, there probably was always something. You might just say that that's God. I might just say that that's the universe in some capacity. And from there, it would be a matter of us going, well, what information do we have that makes us lean one way or the other? I fully believe that all of our information leads us to, hey, there was probably some natural thing going around, right? But most of the religious people would say that it's the God thing that falls in there. But for me, that's just another assumption that we're adding on, right? We're just assuming right now that there probably was something because there is something, right? And you're just assuming that too, because we're just in the same sinking boat. But now you're saying, hey, before this boat was built, we actually had a much stronger bottom that never got holes in it. And it's like, well, too late now, I guess. I hope some of that makes sense.
It's like the turtle holding the world, and it just keeps going and going and going.
Say again?
To the respect, right? Interesting.
Well,
okay,
Jarrod, as you try to answer this question, as you try to answer it, be careful when you come to a conclusion. Maybe call us back, right?
Yeah,
because
please.
if you remember, there's a story a few years back from a fella who went searching for the same. Could it be that we're in the Matrix right now? And he had a hypothesis that the answer was yes. And so to test it, he murdered his parents.
Yeah.
Happy Father's Day.
Not a good test.
Yeah.
Not a good test.
And now it didn't unleash the agents or whatever. It put him in prison with dead parents. And of course, all those loved around him. Imagine if there was a set of beliefs that you could have that would lead to even worse outcomes.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But I think this was a really good call, Jarrod. And please go look into some of the stuff we said, find out where we're wrong, and come back and give us a call, because I think this was a good conversation. So.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm a big fan. And I'll say one more thing. Maybe it's possible that we don't actually have this answer. We'll never have it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I'll answer that real quick after I drop you. So if you're not watching, definitely go back and check it out. But again, thanks so much, Jarrod, for hanging out with us today. Yeah, I think that's a good point too, right? And because this is where we get into this place of coming to conclusions before we have all the proper evidence. So this is the black swan fallacy. We go, oh gosh, we've never seen a black swan, therefore they just can't be the case. oops, just wait around another week and here one walks, across your path, right? So it's like, yes, I think saying categorically ruling it out that we will never, ever, 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 that seems like we're going too far. But it seems it currently, it really does seem to be the most likely outcome, that as things with both space and time, we probably are never going to understand what it's like to not have either. So hopefully, I don't know if I think somebody that made sense to somebody. Some of that was
I was with you the whole time.
Okay, Tom. Cool. That's good. Well, stay with me because a couple of things. One, I have an update. So the Ann W. Richards Congress Avenue Bridge hosts the largest urban bat colony in the world, estimated at 1.5 million bats. And it's a maternal colony, and female Mexican free-tailed bats will raise an estimated 750,000 pups each year. Yeah, I know. Isn't that cool? That is.
How many
really
pups
cool.
per bat is that? So
I think it's one. I think they only have one per like.
There's like 1.2 million. How many bats?
Yeah, like 1.2. Like, so I think so.
They each have half one?
Well,
it was a maternal.
Well, so there's like 750 that come back from Mexico, right? And then they all have kids. And then by this time of the year, it's like a 1.5 million. You know what? This is not bat experience, Tom.
Yeah.
Chill out with you.
Yeah, sorry. You give these facts out there, and of course the people. I'm not watching the chat. I'm assuming people are arguing about this as well.
They want to know. I get it. Well, let me talk to you about some wonderful ways that you can support this channel. And I've actually got a special cool announcement here in just a second. So if you would like to support us, there are a bunch of easy ways to help us out here at AXP and the ACA. You can become a member of this channel for as little as 99 cents a month. You just click that join button below the video, and this will give you access to all those super sweet special chat emojis. So if you are a member out there, go ahead and make the mods angry at me by just spamming the crap out of those for the moment, you guys. You can also send a super chat with a question or comment, which will be read live on air during the show. In fact, we've got one right now for $1.99 from Chris Moon. Awesome live stream, and keep up the great work. Thank you.
Oh, we will. Okay.
We do appreciate that. We do appreciate that. And before we get to another call, I want to shout out this super, super cool thing. I'm going a little bit out of order, and I'm probably going to get in trouble with the crew, but it's fine. So, folks, we have a Patreon here, okay? And it's awesome. And like Tom said, you get all kinds of incredible access to stuff already. But check this out. Tom had this awesome idea. And so what we're going to do is, for today, if you're a patron member, before the end of the show, before this show ends, if you are a member on our Patreon, by the time this show ends, we will choose one patron at random who will receive this Bible in Tom's hand, autographed by myself and him. Okay? So we want you to join the Patreon because we know how many wonderful things there are. And Tom was like, let's do something cool. So Tom is going to sign that Bible by the end of this show. I am going to get that Bible sent to me, and I am going to sign it. And then before the show ends today, we will pick that one random patron. So if you are not a patron right now, you can do it really easy. Go to tiny.cc/PatreonAXP. Okay. Whether you're new, whether you're old, again, you have until the end of the episode to get your chance at this drawing. So I think that is a super cool thing. And yeah, I'm excited to get that out there. So we will be announcing that. Tom, I'm going to have you announce that. I'll go ahead and tell you right now, I'm giving you more work. Okay.
Absolutely.
Good.
100%. We just need to know who to present it to. And one lucky winner at the end will be written.
It's going to be pretty awesome. I'm excited for it. And we will get to that. But first, we're going to go out to Washington. We've got Mike. He's a theist, he, him pronouns. And it sounds like you have some examples of natural revelation. We got some.
Turn the radio off.
Coming in. Yeah. We're just going to mute you and put you back in the queue, Mike, for just a second. I'm assuming we will get that fixed very quickly, but it's okay because we can go out to India. We've got Nitin Gard. I hope I pronounced that right. He, him, please correct me on my pronunciation. You're talking with SR and Tom. What's up?
Hey, man, and I'm calling from India, and let me get right to the question. So, the topic that I would like to talk to you about is why atheism and not agnosticism.
Yeah, good question. Definitely. Tom, you want to strike first on that?
Yeah, I mean, a difference without distinction, in my opinion, right? Like, Dawkins has the famous scale of 1 to 7, right? 1 is I know that there is a God, and 7 is I know that there's not a God. On that scale, most of us would probably consider ourselves a 6, but that doesn't make us agnostic necessarily. We identify as atheists, whatever. So for me, it's a distinction without a difference, or whatever that phrase is, because I live my life as if I'm a 7, right? That there's nothing at the end of it,
right.
And that kind of brings a sentiment to every moment, I suppose, that you don't necessarily get if you're hoping to go to the next one and doing all these different rules that I'm reading about in this fascinating text. Now that's my thought. SR, you?
Yeah, I think oftentimes, especially in just like casual conversation, that is the case. There just really isn't a difference between these terms for a lot of people. There are a couple of different reasons why I take the label atheist as opposed to agnostic. One reason is because for me personally, I do take a little bit harder of a stance on, God's existence, any deity's existence than a lot of other people out there that use the label atheist. I mean, I'm one of those people that says literally every single definition of a God that I have ever heard is wrong in some way. Okay. Now that doesn't mean that I rule out categorically that there could be something. But I just say everything that I've ever come across, I definitely am saying, hey, does not exist. I'll take that positive stance on that, But one big reason that I choose the label atheist has to do with what it's like to be an atheist the world over. And as shitty as it sure can be in the South in the US, to be an out and professed atheist, I can guarantee you that in other parts of the world right now, to say that is a death sentence, right? I mean, I just think of people like Sohail Arabi, who has been imprisoned for the last how many years now, right? Because he said that he didn't believe in a God, right? Like it's insane the way that atheists are treated all over the world, right? People have died repeatedly from this, from just saying, I don't believe in your God. And so in part, I try to use that label more often, especially in public spaces, because I want to normalize non-belief. I want to get more people in this world who do not necessarily agree with me to, at the very fucking least, go, okay, I'm not going to kill you or imprison you for that word, right? So I think it's a very, very low bar, Nitin, but I mean, unfortunately, we still have to get over that bar. So, but yeah, we've talked a lot at you. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so I find myself bouncing between atheism and agnosticism as I go on to live. But I cannot find a definite reason, like you just told me, to call myself an atheist. Yes, on a scale of 7 or 10, I find myself right in the middle, because I cannot definitely say that there is no such thing as God, or something that something supernatural or cosmic, or something unexplicable, right? Are there? I mean, I would like to ask you this question, sir. Have you experienced anything like out of the ordinary, or something that you cannot explain?
Yes, all the time, my whole life.
Okay, so can we interpret that as part of being part of supernatural?
No.
And that supernatural,
Hang
chaos
on.
could
Stop right
be
there. Stop
that.
right there for me,
Okay,
Nitin.
okay.
Stop right there. Yeah, because I'll explain. Okay. Let me ask you this. Okay. I got this book right here. Okay. See this book? I've got one word that's written on the first page. Okay. Do you know what that word is?
No.
You don't? You don't know what the word is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So how do you know that the word isn't supernatural? Do you see how that doesn't make
I'm
sense?
sorry.
Do you
Can
see
you
why you're confused right now?
please?
Because what I told you is there's a piece of information out there you don't have any knowledge of whatsoever. And then I asked you, what knowledge do you have of that information? It's a contradiction. It's a flat out contradiction. You've told me that the thing is unexplainable. And then you've asked me to explain it. And that's why we don't get to do that. When we look at something in the sky and it goes zip, 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 and it has all these pretty lights and stuff, and then we go, oh my gosh, that's an unexplained aerial phenomenon. It's not fair for us to then try to explain it because we've already granted that it's not explained. We already said we don't know. Now we can make cute little guesses, right? We can do the whole hypothesize this and all that. But if
I'm
we
sorry. I'm
have
sorry.
experience, go ahead. Go
All
ahead.
right, all right. Sorry, I'm interrupting you right here. So if someone makes a decision to go on that path to search, to actually know the answer, if someone is on that path, right, in order to find, now being on that path, one has to accept the fact that he doesn't know, that there might
Yes.
be a possibility in the extremes. But right now, at this stage, at the present, he doesn't know. Simply, he doesn't know. So that was my question to you. I mean, if you don't know, then how can you call yourself an atheist? I mean, I'm
Because
asking this question to
because
myself through you,
right,
Mm.
because
right?
the question that you're actually asking is a broader one. The question is about how do we as individuals get to a place of accepting claims as either true or false, right? And so where we're at is we're at a place, you and I are both in the same place of not having any information that differentiates between us choosing this thing being true or being false, right? We don't have anything whatsoever. We're standing in this boat of just going, oh gosh, we don't know. And because we don't know, taking the next step and accepting the claim, which would be what you're doing by saying, well, a God is still probably out there. That's not okay because we've
Not,
already
not.
granted that we don't know anything, right?
See, not the type of God that has been explained up until now in this
But it
world that
doesn't.
we live
But
in.
it doesn't
All right,
matter.
not
The
that God.
attributes of the God, Nitin, don't matter. Okay, because no matter what the attributes are for this God, at the end of the day, if it's in that category of we just don't have any information one way or the other, we should still do the thing that we do in every other instance of our lives, where we withhold our acceptance until presented with some type of information that points us one way or the other, right? So if you take the softer form of the term atheism, all you're saying at the end of the day is, I just really don't have that belief, right? Somebody says, hey, Bigfoot's real, and he came to a dinner party last night with me. And you just go, oh, I don't really believe that, right? You're not categorically ruling out the existence of Bigfoot, especially if somebody goes through the effort of saying, well, what I mean by Bigfoot is actually just a particular type of ape that has existed in the woodlands of North America for a really long time and really doesn't have, it's kind of like a person, but it's kind of ape-like, and it's just this thing that we haven't found yet. It's like, well, if you describe it like that, the possibility goes up because now your definition is more tied to reality, but we still don't have anything that actually pushes us towards the acceptance of that claim. And so for the time being, it is the reasonable stance to just say, we don't know. It's probably not there, though. We don't have any reason to believe it. Is that any of that sit well with you? Any of that fair or explanatory? We might have lost him, but that's okay. That's all right.
That was good though. I appreciate that perspective of like,
Yeah.
but life's so amazing. Think about it. There's miracles all the time. And you might remember this. I saw a few years back. There was a lottery. I think it was in Bosnia, right? The lottery happened and then another lottery and the exact same numbers. And like, what are the odds?
Right.
Well, they're astronomically like insane.
Yep.
And yet they couldn't find any evidence of cheating or anything like that. So it's just, yeah, what are it happened.
Right. And that is always something, you know, those big numbers, those big odds are always something that I hear, you know, atheists of some kind say. And again, Nitin, I think we just unfortunately had we just lost connection there. I'm not sure, you know, what happened, but that's a good question. And I think the reason that's an important thing that we talk about is because a lot of times what I find is people are using the definition of agnosticism just as like, oh, I don't know. And then atheism as more of a hardcore, yes, I for sure know this thing and it's not that. And that doesn't have to be the case, right? I really do think that Gnosticism and theism are talking about different things. Like when you say you're a theist, what you mean is I believe in this particular deity that does stuff in the world around me, right? When you're agnostic, you're saying more like, oh, I just don't know. We just don't have any knowledge any which way, you know? But again, like I said, if we're in the boat of agreeing that we don't have any knowledge on a particular claim or subject, taking the next step to then start saying, but here is what we know, like that can be really problematic. It's not to say that like we don't know everything about dark energy, but we know a good bit, actually. We do actually know a good bit, you know, but that's different than saying like, oh, there's just this thing out there that we have no understanding of whatsoever. But here's what it is, you know, it's just a little bit contradictory there, I think. So any other thoughts on that before we go and grab some more calls? Tom, I'm sorry. I got.
Oh no! I think talking
today.
Thinking in air, asking of God and whatnot.
Right.
No,
right.
I mean, it's no. Yeah, I'm with you. Let's keep going.
Sweet. Well, before we grab the next call, I am gonna let you folks know about the channel that houses all of the shows of the ACA in audio podcast form. What? So go check out tiny.cc/AEN podcast, and you can listen to all the latest shows from the Atheist Experience, Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted, the Nonprofits, and others on one super convenient place, folks, which is always nice. So let's go down to Georgia. We've got Christian. Him wants to talk about the reliability of the Gospels. Hey, Christian, you're talking with SR and Tom. What's up?
I called
Hey.
I called the Talk Even in some other place and just
great.
asking you know, opinions about the New Testament. And I wanted to ask you guys what if, you know, you guys don't believe the New Testament is reliable, and fair enough, but what like how did you come to that conclusion? What standard, you know, did you find that the New Testament didn't meet? What evidence were you looking for that it didn't satisfy? Stuff like that.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's a great place to start. Tom, where did you fall out on all this?
Oh my goodness. I guess my personal story, right, is that I was raised Catholic, and then in high school I was getting confirmed. I was taking psychology and sociology and mythology. Those four things all at the same time. I'm like, oh, these three all kind of like work together for me logically. And this outsider one,
That's a
a
combo.
little bit, I'm treating it different, right? to accept the claims that are being put in there. So, I mean, Bart Ehrman, the scholar, biblical scholar, recently had a video on the 30,000 errors in the Bible or whatever over the years. So it's just like a lot of it just doesn't make sense.
I thought he said variance.
Variance? Yeah, whatever.
I thought he said variance.
Sure.
And
well, good. You're following along. So I guess how do you reason through that? I guess would be my counter question.
Oh, it's easy. It's a misleading figure. It's like, yeah, they're 30,000. But
wouldn't one be enough if you think that the Bible is like the Word of God?
Well, I can explain the Bar Ehrman part. We can get to that. The 30,000 part is saying that there are 30,000 plus like textual differences between the 6,000, or some odd Greek New Testament manuscripts or fragments of manuscripts. And that's true, but it's like, what are those variants? Like 90% of them are like changed in a word order, or it's like saying towards instead of toward.
Even if 10% are really bad, like that's still.
I wonder, and
but none of them change the theology though. Like none of them are groundbreaking or like.
Yeah, if you don't look at them critically.
Yeah, I get what you're.
No. I mean,
hang on a second, Christian. Because I get where you're going
with
that about the variance and stuff. Like, yeah, I grant that. Okay, writing down, TO versus TOO, it's like, okay, copied an extra letter. It's not that big of a deal. But I guess for me, it does make me wonder if like you would have to agree that like adding a letter to a word is an error in at least one sense, right? Like it's a mistake. If the word is spelled W-A-N-T, okay. So then I guess does that?
I do want to clarify. Like, I don't think that the Bible as it exists now is inerrant, because it's like, we can account for
some of it has to be true.
Differences and things.
Yeah,
I would say
some
the
of it
Bible
has
is
to be
true,
true.
but it's not. Yeah, the Bible's true, but the text, like we know, like, yeah, it probably was a spelling mistake or like a scribal error or something like that. It's like, I believe the autographs were probably inerrant, but like, it doesn't mean we can't possibly understand what was said.
No, I get that. And that's not where I'm going. Where I'm going is, it seems to me that you've done this thing, which honestly, I mean, I did this for a really long time myself. You've done this thing where if there is something that presents itself as a problem, right, then, it's really not that big of a deal. But all of these other things that claim to be 100% truth now, they seem to be on shakier footing, right? Because now you've got in a single, hang on just a second. In a single text now, you've got something that you grant meets the criteria for you to be a mess up of some kind, right? Even if it's tiny. But then there's that later portion of the text that you go, well, that's 100% correct. And I guess my question there is, how do you differentiate between those two?
Which is which?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. Also, I apologize if I like interrupt because I'm on a delay.
No, I'll do it too. Don't worry. It's all good. All good.
Yeah. All right. So, as I said earlier with like the Bar Ehrman thing, like there are, it's well accounted for that there are lots of like textual, and it's like the word variant kind of, and I'm not trying to excuse it. So like, it like the word variant kind of has, I think, a greater weight than people, think it does, or maybe the other way around. It's like a spelling mistake or like a transliteration. Because like in Koine alone, there are like 5 million Koine words. There are like 1 million English words. So it's like, no doubt there's going to be some variations, but literally none of the variations change theology. They don't change the premise of the narrative or the meta narrative. It's like, it's not hard to understand what was said, even in the autographs. Like you can, like what historians do, they just compare what was said between each manuscript and they
I get this.
Put them together.
What I'm trying to get at, Christian, is a little bit deeper than that. It's a little bit underneath that. Okay. So I get that making a word from changing the word from toward to towards does not change the whole context, really, right? It doesn't really change much about
Yeah.
anything, okay? But it does
Yeah,
seem to bring up this issue. And that issue is that now the book that is in front of us, seemingly by both of our acceptances, has some problems. There's at least one spot in the whole place that we know was a mess up of some kind, no matter how small. So then the question has to be asked, how do we know that the stuff about Jesus being the Son of God and rising from the dead wasn't also a mess up, but just from older manuscripts that we don't have anymore? Like, how do you differentiate
Yeah, well,
between what is
that's a
true
great-
in the
no, that's a great
Bible and
question.
what isn't?
Mm.
No, that's a great question. So yeah, it's like, I don't think that, and it is kind of a claim that I think a lot of Christians, like, they don't have to defend, because the Bible doesn't say the Bible is inerrant. Like, unlike the Quran, for example, it's like the Bible doesn't say the Bible is perfect.
That's fair.
And it's like, we can understand and we can acknowledge that there are like textual differences between like a word, or there's like a transliteration, stuff like that. And they don't, you know, as I said earlier, they don't disrupt theology. But to answer your question about like, what do we know is real? You know, it's like sorry?
I was
No,
giggling. Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, no, no, it's all good. I thought you said something. But the, you know, as I said earlier, like the textual differences between the 1,000 manuscripts are very minimal. And aside from them, they all say the exact same thing, you know, barring these variants, basically word for word. And the meaning isn't like there are manuscripts which are like, Jesus was never God, you know, and then all the other ones said that they were. It's like they all say the exact same thing, just about in the exact same way, give or take like a toward or towards. They don't argue on theology. They don't argue on the sonship of God and Jesus Christ. They don't,
Christian,
you know,
let me jump in for a second. Maybe I can refocus us a little bit. Maybe I can refocus us a little bit.
Yeah,
okay?
Sure.
There is a point in the Bible. There is at least somewhere in there where it says God is like all powerful, right? You with me? You following with me so far?
There's many places, yeah.
Cool. Okay. So do you think that is true?
Most certainly.
Cool. Awesome. There's a part in the Bible where it said God is like a hen that covers its chicks with its wings. Do you think God is a hen with wings? Do you think that is true?
Well, that's where you get into textual criticism, right?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I think this is the crux of the issue here, Christian. I think this is exactly the problem. So seriously, this isn't a trick or anything. Like, I'm not trying to lead you anywhere. I genuinely think this is interesting. So the thing about where it says,
I do not believe God is a chicken.
Right. Of course not. It's a metaphor, right? It's a metaphor, right? Has to be.
Textual criticism.
Has to be trying to give us some understanding, right? By comparing it to other stuff. So here's the question, because this is what I was getting at. What criteria do you use that differentiates between that first verse being true to life, representing reality, versus that second one really just being a metaphor? What is the difference?
Yeah.
How do you determine between the two? Because that's really important.
Okay, I see. Okay, yeah. I think I answered the wrong question that I thought you asked. Yeah.
That's okay.
So
that's all right.
The answer to that question is no, you're good. The answer to that question, that's called hermeneutics. You know, I'm sure you've heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
It's where you take a text and you make an inference, and you make understandings based on like context of the time, the language it's written in, the people who wrote it, right? Geopolitics, things like that. And you can I don't think it's even disputable. You can understand what's literal and what's not, right? Like, if you understand anything about Hebrew poetry, yes. Like, if you understand anything about Hebrew poetry,
hang on, because I'm following along with you on hermeneutics. Hang on a second, okay?
Oh, I thought you said hermeneutics. No. Herman Cain's autobiography.
No.
So if I told you that my house is a mansion, if I said my house is a mansion, Is that literal or metaphor?
It could be either.
It could be. And what would be the criteria that you would use to determine whether it's literal or metaphor?
Good question. It would depend on. Sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. I thought you were going to say. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah. I thought someone else said something. It would depend on. So is it descriptive or is it prescriptive? Is it following some type of metaphorical style or poetic style of the language, which is contemporaneous with the time period?
There's something underneath what you're getting at. How do you determine if it's metaphoric style?
I just said it. Yeah, you can understand. You can get a good grip on it based on other writings of the period, and you can compare.
But how? If all of the writings say SR's house is a mansion, how do you determine? Let me posit something to you, and you tell me if I'm off base on this, okay? If I said to you, my house is a mansion, and then I took a picture of my house and I showed it to you, and my house was actually a double wide trailer, the reason that you would then say, oh, when SR said his house is a mansion, that's metaphor. The reason that the criteria would be that the words that I used do not correspond to the reality around us, right? That would be the one distinguishing factor,
right?
That's the distinguishing factor,
right?
Always.
When it comes to,
that is always the case.
But let me say this: when you don't know, like, let's say if you say your house is a mansion and I don't have a photo in front of me, I have to use indirect means, which is called hermeneutics, to understand. And as I was answering your question, when it comes to, like, let's say like Hebrew poetry or Semitic poetry or whatever, you can get a grasp on things like idioms and literary devices by analyzing how are they used. I'm about to answer by how they're used in other cultures outside of the text itself.
But I think you're running into the same problem, Christian, because what you're saying is it's circular right now. You're saying they're metaphors because we know they're metaphors because we know they're metaphors. But what is actually happening is you see an idiom in the old Hebrew, and then you find that same idiom in another text written by some other completely different language, some other completely different group. And then you realize that what they're talking about, see, they said the camel floated to the tops of the heavens. And you realize that camels don't float. And because camels don't float in the real world around us, most likely what they're saying is not literal. Most likely what they're saying is a metaphor. So at the end of the day, what you're actually using to determine whether or not something in the Bible is literal or metaphor is the same thing that we use when it comes to truth, that which corresponds to reality. And so that's the problem. That's the issue.
Well, I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead.
Yeah. I was gonna say, like, that's partly true. It's like, its adherence to reality is definitely like a factor, but you have to understand when it comes to, like, let's say we're talking about, the Bible has tons of different types of literature in it, but we'll just focus on poetry, right? If it has poetry, you can appeal to something outside of the Bible, and that's why it's not circular reasoning, because you can make an inference by something that's outside of the text itself. And that can form a pretty concise case as to, this is probably like a good example. A good example would be, and I will unfortunately use the Bible to prove the Bible, but they're hundreds of years apart.
You just say this isn't circular reasoning. That's what kind of perked my ears up.
Well, bear with me now. Bear with me.
I'm bearing with you. Here we go.
We'll give you
the idiom 3 days and 3 nights. You're familiar with that?
Sure.
Right?
No, for the folks at home.
Sorry?
For the folks at home, what's the idiom of 3 days and 3 nights?
The idiom of 3 days and 3 nights was used in all 4 of the Gospels, and what people mistakenly sometimes think, because sometimes they're like, oh, well, Jesus was talking about Jonah in the heart in the belly of the whale for 3 days, whatever. Sometimes they think that it's 3 full days and 3 full nights, when in fact, no, it's an idiom. It's just like in the same way as saying, oh, how many days did you work this week? Like, oh, I worked 2. It's like, you probably didn't work 2 full days without sleeping, right? It's an idiom. It's a figure of speech. That same language is used in, as used in the 4 Gospels, is also used in the book of Esther, which historians know is hundreds of years before any gospel, right? And that's just.
All right, hold on. I got caught up in a moment because of
poetry
what you're.
Or an idiom, sorry.
But
ahead,
does it like, are we literally talking about a man in the stomach of a whale? Or is that what you're saying? It was a metaphor.
My personal opinion?
Yeah.
Well, what I was talking about was, and it's an objection I've heard a few times, where there's a passage in, I forgot which gospel, but it's like Jesus saying, just like how Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights, so shall the Son of Man be.
Yeah.
You've heard of that?
Yeah, he does that.
And sometimes people, I bet. And sometimes people, because they maybe don't know the context of like textual criticism, blah, 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 they think it's 3 full days and 3 full nights. And they come to that conclusion.
Was it any of those? Was it any of those?
Yeah, I think that with this particular reference that you're bringing up, Christian, I just don't feel like the 3 days, 3 nights thing it would be as powerful. I would focus on the being in the belly of a fish thing being a metaphor. But then the question still arises, and we haven't gotten any good answer other than, well, we see other places in the Bible that we also say are metaphor, right? Just because the same metaphor is used. Hang on just a second. Hang on. You mentioned that. You mentioned that, for instance, 3 days, 3 nights is repeated in Esther, and there are other places that certain idioms or metaphors are repeated throughout the Bible. Kind of makes sense, building off of one religion to make another. Kind of makes sense that they would be there. But the question at the end of the day, the foundational problem is you are using the same method for determining whether it's a metaphor or whether it's literal that I do. But the issue is that when it comes to those things that you say are literal, despite them not corresponding to reality, you say, but they are literal. And you would have to, right? Unless you believe that the Bible is completely... I guess you're talking about the resurrection. Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely. There's certain things in the Bible that have to be actual 100% literal truth.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Right.
No doubt.
So the problem though is that
your question is, how do we know that's literal and not other stuff?
Well, right. It's the same question I've been asking, because I think at the end of the day, we use the same method, but the problem is just the consistency of applying that. So I say the reason that I know it's a metaphor when it talks about God being a chicken is because the vast majority of people who talk about their conception of God don't do that. They don't say it's a chicken. And that's the reality around us. Just like when I see in the Bible that it says a global flood, I know that that's not possible due to a lot of problems.
Probably talking about a local flood.
Probably a metaphor, probably just trying to tell a story, get it out in a cool way. But if that's the criteria that we use to determine metaphor in this instance, when we use that in other instances, we arrive at the same problems. That resurrection of a human being doesn't actually correspond to the world around us, but it could be a metaphor, a perfectly wonderful metaphor about being nice to each other.
Yeah, can I raise a contention to that?
Yeah, please.
So, So with the, the question of like, how do we know that Jesus saying, I'm going to rise in 3 days, and yes, I am the Son of God. How do we know that's a metaphor? We can come to, in my opinion, you take me up, you correct me wrong, wrong. We can come to I think, pretty sure, consensus that he probably meant it literally, because first century Jews killed him because he claimed to be the Messiah, and not like traditional messianic claimant type thing, like the warrior king, but like, I'm actually God and I'm actually going to be resurrected. You know, like they literally killed him because he was saying he was God. So they didn't think that it was a metaphor, or else they wouldn't have killed him.
I'll grant you, let's say, I'll grant you a bunch of toys here. Okay. One, Jesus probably was a real person. He probably did run around in the time period in the area saying many of the things he said. Totally cool with that. And I'm glad you think that,
because some people don't.
Well, that's a totally different story. It doesn't. Yeah, I think that's a whole different conversation.
I don't think you're gonna like the rest of it, but good start.
Yeah. So the next thing, though,
we'll see.
I definitely, I'll give it to you. I fully think Jesus believed literally, Son of God, gonna raise from the dead. Here's where it gets interesting, though. How do we know that stuff? How do we know that stuff? What are you using? What is the criteria to determine that it is actually literal? He may have believed it, just like my buddy literally believes there are 7 species of aliens that have been cataloged and studied. So, like, how do I know that that's real, or just fancy words that are used to get a point across? Does that make sense? Like, I think Jesus probably believes the stuff he was saying, and I think his followers probably did too, but that doesn't mean that it's not a metaphor just because people sincerely believe stuff.
Okay, yeah, I see. And I do want to bring up, like, just because, and, you know, I'll grant you that Jesus spoke metaphorically all the time, and he said it himself, right? You know,
purposefully spoken metaphors.
Just because, thank you. Just because it's a metaphor, it doesn't mean that there's not truth behind it. And I would say that's like literally all of Jesus' metaphors. All of them have truth behind it. They just are. And he said it in the Gospels, like, I forgot the exact verbiage, but, you know, he said he has to, you know, speak in parables because, well, it was for the fulfillment of prophecy, but that's a different subject. But he spoke in parables because it would help make things more digestible and more palatable. It didn't mean that they were any less true. It just meant that he was condensing, you know, information where it's less necessary to be completely literal.
Totally following along with you,
you're
Christian.
About to say something?
Totally on board with you for, like, pretty much everything you just said. But here's the problem, is that in certain instances in the Bible, right? We grant there are some that are metaphors. We grant there are some that are literal. In certain instances in the Bible, the most important part has to be literal. It has to be.
Yes, definitely.
Right. And so the problem that we run into there is not, hey, maybe he's using a metaphor, but there's truth behind it, right? Either Jesus Christ died on the cross to forgive the sins and transgressions of humans, and then rose again and sat by God's side, or he didn't. That's the most. So we could have it as a metaphor and say, yes, but the issue you see is that if you are truly going to say, hey, like, Jesus Christ, Son of God, I believe, forgiveness of sins and stuff,
right?
The parts of that understanding that have to be literal are the biggest problematic parts. And even if you say that the whole narrative is a metaphor, those specific pieces in the metaphor just flat out seem to not correspond to reality. We have never seen a single person rise from the dead. Say again?
Yeah. I thought I don't believe the entire Gospels are completely a metaphor. It's
right.
A mix of multiple types of literature, but yeah.
Right. But
and I'll answer your question when you're done.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, please. I've talked a lot. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, you're good. You're good. Yeah. So, you know, I see where you're coming from, where it's like, yes, either Jesus arose from the dead or he didn't, and we're all doomed. And you're, you know, taking that and you're kind of transpositioning that to either it was a metaphor, right, or it was not, and he was actually being super serious about it. What I'm saying is that's kind of, I think, a false dichotomy, Because it's like there, you know,
Right. I'm not making that dichotomy.
I'm just making sure, like whether Jesus was the Son of God or not, that is like definitely kind of like a law exclude the middle type thing. Like he can't be neither or both, right?
Sure.
But something can be. Jesus can say something metaphorically, and it's still 100% true, which he also did.
I don't know how that works.
And you're going to
hang on. Yeah.
Well, no, I can explain that. I can explain that.
Hey, well, give me a second here. Give me a second here. Because didn't we agree earlier that one of the criteria in determining that a statement is a metaphor is the fact that it doesn't correspond to reality in certain specific ways, right?
Well, you
didn't we agree on that?
I agreed with that instance with the floating camels and stuff like that. But that's also making the presupposition that we know everything about reality, right?
No, no, it's not. No, it's not.
Can't change.
No. It incorporates that. It incorporates that entirely, because what I'm saying is that all of the current available evidence leads us to accepting this claim that camels just don't float. We've never freaking seen it. It doesn't mean that it's categorically impossible, but we have no reason to accept it right now. Thus, when we hear somebody say, my camel floated to the top of the hill, we assume, hey, that's a metaphor because camels don't float. So it is the specific lack of correspondence to the reality around us that is the criteria for determining a metaphor. And so how then could somebody speak entirely in metaphors and be literally true? Does that make sense? There's a contradiction there.
It makes. I'm picking up where you're putting down. But I do have to say this. I agree with that instance in the camel part, because like how much something can adhere to reality, I think it plays a part in most metaphors, and it definitely can help us understand most. I'm not gonna say like it's useless, but what I brought up, you brought up the adherence to reality part. What I brought up was understanding the cultural context. So I can't say it's a contradiction to say Jesus was speaking in a metaphorical sense, but was saying something 100% true, because I said one of my criteria for understanding hermeneutics, which most historians use all the time, is understanding the historical context. And it's not just, is it something that we can empirically understand and it always happens and it never doesn't happen, right? It's like, that's not, hermeneutics probably entails part of that, but it's mostly about textual criticism, understanding the historical context, understanding different types of literature, inside and outside of the text. And, it's like, they're not mutually exclusive. Jesus can say, something about his godhood, right? Or his, godhood and personhood. And he can say it in a different way than just saying, I am God.
Yeah.
And it's still true if he is the Son of God, right?
But then it's not a metaphor.
Mutually exclusive.
But hang on, Christian, can I do something with you real quick? I'm just going to put you on mute for literally like 30 seconds as I rattle off some of these announcements, because I've just been so far behind, but I want to keep this conversation going because it's really good. Okay, I'll do this real quick. I swear.
Yeah.
Awesome. Because I have to let you guys know a couple of things. One, if you're not a patron yet, you still got time. The show isn't over and we are going to be announcing. So get that in. But also, we've got a limited edition t-shirt. This t-shirt, you guys know, tiny.cc/merch ACA. You can get all the greatest, coolest stuff right there. Question your beliefs. Truth has nothing to fear from inquiry. So tiny.cc/merch ACA. And finally, I want to send a real quick, big freaking thank you to the amazing crew who gets this going every single week. They put up with my crap. They put up with Tom's crap, and they keep coming back. And honestly, it's the cat. It's the cat that does it all. Greg's just there for eye candy. He knows it. And real quick, and we will get right back to Christian. If you happen to be in the Austin area next week on June 25th of 2023, why not join us for the live broadcast of Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience? Talk Heathen will be hosted by Objectively Dan and Jamie the Blind Limey, and the Atheist Experience will be hosted by Christy Powell and Jimmy Jr. Doors open at noon, so freaking get there, y'all. Yeah, do that. Do it. We hope to see you there. It'll be a good time. All right,
You
Christian.
better be there.
That's right. That's right. We're bringing you back on. Tom, was there anything
All right.
you wanted to respond to real quick before
Just-
I'd like to hear from Tom.
Yeah.
Just point of order on this one. I've been fact checking here. It was Jonah and the whale. It was not a whale. It was a grouper. So I don't know if that necessarily
Yeah, the Hebrew word,
changes.
it just means sea. No, the Hebrew word is like sea creature. It's like, that's just how Hebrew works.
Yeah,
it's
it says
like
grouper.
Kind of ubiquitous and, just a fish, sea creature.
Yeah, they can get pretty big.
It doesn't matter, but yeah.
But was your point from before is like, hey, it was like, it wasn't 3 or 4 days. It was like 1 or 2 work days, 8 hours, something like that.
Yeah, the
Lunch
3
in
days and
between.
3 nights part. Yeah. Yeah, just emphasizing like why textual criticism is important.
Yeah. Criticism of like, no, nobody's getting eaten by a fish for that long, right?
That's not
Even
what,
if it is a grouper.
No, I wasn't talking about the account. I was talking about the idiom 3 days and 3 nights being like literal, or like, is it just a figure of speech of the time?
Right. I guess we could have used a different example if we're not thinking that is the grouper a metaphor then? We got the idiom of 3 days and 3 nights, but is the grouper a metaphor? We're back to this. And I think that's what the SR was saying earlier is like, it seems like we're picking and choosing which one's metaphor and which one's literal. And some of it has to be literal. So then how do you choose which is metaphor and which is literal? And there's the classic, there's no part of the Bible that says,
Hermeneutics.
oh, by the way, once you get to the 20th century and you have a democracy and, laws and protecting people, you can just jettison all the barbarism from the earlier parts of this book.
Yeah,
It doesn't have that interjection.
Yeah, sure. The answer to that is just called hermeneutics. It's like, I've been talking about it a little bit, but it's understanding the context of cultures at that time period, understanding, in the case of the Bible, extra biblical, literature, styles, stuff like that, languages, how languages work, their grammar, stuff like that. And then you can come to a pretty reasonable conclusion as to what's metaphorical or what's not. And
but it seems like it's like a DIY adventure, right? Sorry to interrupt, Christian, but it seems like that's kind of a DIY adventure. My interpretation is this. Your interpretation is that. Well, let's meet in the middle and murder each other, right?
Well, it's more concrete than that, I would argue. Because it's just like studying language. It's not like, it's not really hard to do if you are like well educated on it, which I'm not. Can
you name another place, another like scholarly study, another field of study where hermeneutics is one of the main ways to understand a text? Can you name any other? Because it is used in New Testament, New Testament criticism. It's often used in the history of the Bible, used whenever reading. All religious studies do this. But is there anything else you can think of that uses this particular form of this particular methodology to come to understanding? Any other field of study you can think of?
That's a good question. Not offhand, no.
Yeah. Okay. Now, here's why I say that. Here's why I say that.
Posing that as a problem?
No.
Okay.
No. All I want is for you. Again, I'm always this dude that gives people homework, and please, Christian, just tell me to fuck off. Like, just be like, no, dude, I got way too much stuff. I ain't doing your shit.
Well, I don't, so I can't do that.
That's
fair.
That's fair. But when it comes to hermeneutics, really the number one place that it is used is when it comes to studying the Bible. That's really the number one place.
Religious studies.
So what I would love if you could figure out why other academic fields don't use this methodology. Maybe there's a reason that they don't use that methodology. I can give you an educated guess. Yeah, what do you think?
Fire.
Yeah, fire. It's because the Bible is like, it's probably the most scrutinized book like in the history of the world ever. So it's like, of course it would be used the most, in religious studies.
But it's not about why it's used the most.
The amount of skepticism towards the Bible is like, and it's maybe warranted, sure. Like, I won't stop them. But, like, the Bible is the most scrutinized, collection of books like in history.
But Christian, what I said was, is not that it's used the most when it comes to biblical criticism, but that pretty much no other academic field uses it. And that would be the interesting point to figure out why. Why is it only when we talk about the New Testament do we talk about criterion of embarrassment? Why don't other academic fields also use this methodology for coming to truth? My thought, my educated guess.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'll be done real quick here. I'll be done real quick, and then we'll wrap up the whole show. This has been a great call, by the way, Christian. I really do appreciate this.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this.
My guess as to why hermeneutics is not regularly used in other academic fields is because the methodology itself does not have reliable conclusions. That's it.
Fair enough. I can't stop you there, but
that would be my guess. But again, that's what I would say. Go
Okay.
look into that and see why other academic fields don't use this methodology. Because if this methodology is really good, why in the hell are people using anything else? Why wouldn't they constantly do this if this is so good?
Well, I mean, when textual criticism involves more than hermeneutics, but no, I get what you mean though, and I'll be sure to look that up because I never thought to ask that. But in talking about the criterion of embarrassment, it's not just used out in the Bible. You know that. It's
almost exclusively used in this exact same place that hermeneutics is used. It's almost exclusively used in the exact same places. Yeah.
Almost always the Bible, because it's the most scrutinized collection of books in history, but it's also used in like works of Confucius.
Sometimes, but it's very rarely criterion of embarrassment.
Not as much as the Bible.
Very rarely used outside of the Bible.
Yeah, not as much as the Bible. Not as much as the Bible, but it doesn't mean it's useless though. But that's good food for thought. So.
Definitely. And please, I'd love, maybe there is like some specific thing out there that honestly, I just don't know. And it's just like, oh no, this doesn't work in other fields of study. Like it only works in the Bible.
But it is interesting to think, and I wouldn't say that just because hermeneutics is mostly used in religious studies. I don't think that means that it's like devoid of use or it is devoid of like purpose.
I would agree.
Like
I would agree.
There
I would just question.
Yes.
I agree. It doesn't categorically rule it out, but I would definitely question as to why it is only used in this instance. Kind of like when you go over to your buddy's house and the buddy's like, hey man, you can drink anything you want, but you can't have that whiskey. You just can't drink that whiskey. Nobody's allowed to drink that whiskey. And then he goes over and pours himself a shot. And you're like, wait, this seems to be only, and he's like, oh, it's because of this thing. And like, you have to reinterpret the beer, compared to the whiskey.
I think hermeneutics is a lot more than that.
Yeah. It is. I was just being a little, I was being a little silly because we're getting, I can take
an educated guess and say that maybe it's in terms of like other fields, I'm not like an expert or anything. Maybe hermeneutics is just not the right tool for the job. Just like how, like a good example would, I guess, be like doing the scientific method for like history. Like you could do that, but you can't do it for everything because you can't repeat history, right? So it's
and maybe
you would use evidentiary methods.
Maybe that is the answer, Christian. Maybe the reason that it's not used in these other fields of study is because it just like trying to use science when it comes to certain things, it just isn't the right tool. But I would just love to hear what you find. I would love to hear what you find out as the reason. Cause I just think this was a really, really great call, man. And we are gonna drop you. Go ahead real quick.
All right. No problem. I was just saying good talk and, I might have to call you back. So,
Yeah, I think you definitely
Please do. Don't forget to join the Patreon for a chance to win this as well, Christian. You probably already have one, but if you join, and we'll be announcing that soon here in a moment.
Yes, we will. Yes.
So you don't have very much time for those lucky last people who want to get involved. Now is the time to do it. I appreciate a caller like Christian. And Christian, you should call specifically us back.
Yes. Tom and I are jealous, just like God, and we want your call next time you call in. So thank you so much again, Christian. That is really that is how I want these calls to go. I want somebody who, hey, let me throw out an idea. And then we go, well, here's kind of my thoughts. And they go, well, here's kind of my thoughts. And we hash it out and really try to get to the core of the issue. I think we did. I think that was good, man.
And we all learned in the process too.
I hope
right?
so.
Like,
I learned
you
something.
learned about hermeneutics.
That's right.
I learned about grouper.
I learned about bats. So, I mean, we've done something
show.
right today. Do you have that Patreon winner? Do you have that, Tom? Can you see that?
Oh, I do have a drawing, a lucky drawing. Indeed, we do.
Well, hang on. Before we tell you the winner, I have to let you know, folks. Some days I sit around and I say to myself, gosh, I just don't have enough ACA content. And I wish there was a place where I could get it all the time. Well, good news is we have heard your not prayers, and we actually have a 24/7 live stream channel. AXP TV gives you a constant stream of shows, clips, and specials from the over 26 seasons of the Atheist Experience. And now AEN TV provides you with clips from the other shows on the AEN network. So we've got Talk Heathen, Truth Wanted, Secular Sexuality, just to name a few. So you can watch or listen to your favorite hosts and discover some new hosts you've never heard of. You can check out tiny.cc/AXPTV and tiny.cc/AENTV. And you can join in on the fun, folks. So what do we have, Tom? We have a winner. We have a winner, right?
We do indeed. And this book will be traveling the world to get to you, Mr. Rob Hinton.
Woo!
Bible from SR and myself in honor of Father's Day. Thank you so much for your wonderful patronage.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That is awesome. Rob Hinton, you rock. I will let you know that our crew will be reaching out to you soon, and we will make sure that we get all of that squared away for you, and then you will be receiving your very own signed copy of the Bible, blasphemously signed by Tom and myself. So, Rob, congratulations. Thank you so much for being a patron. And if you would like to be like Rob in the future and have a chance to win from some of our future giveaways, you can become a patron right here, right now at tiny.cc/PatreonAXP. Easy freaking peasy, guys. And just as a final reminder, before we get out of here and go hang out in the ACD Discord, that's right, the fan run ACA Discord, folks. It's tiny.cc/ACD Discord, I think. Oh, look, it's right there on the screen in front of me. I really should just listen to what the crew says. But remember, folks, the question of the week is complete this sentence in the comments below. The reason Jesus hasn't returned is because he's been too busy blank. So whatever you think Jesus has been doing that has been keeping him from that whole second coming thing, let us know in the comments below, and then check out at the beginning of next week's episode, and you will hear the top 3 answers. And now I think we are almost ready. We're almost ready to go hang out in the Discord. But before we do, Tom, where the heck can people find more great stuff from you?
Oh, the same place as we've always been. Call the old number. They'll give you a new one. We're over at www.howeverwegothere.com or www.howeverwegothere.com. Pay us a visit. Looking forward to seeing y'all.
Love it. Love it, man. Yeah, it was so much fun being back on with you today. I was like, oh yeah, I get to hang out with Tom. I know that guy. That's always a good thing. So I loved it. I hope we had some fun times in the chat. I hope we had we learned some things. At the very least, we know more about bats, you guys. So we've all come away from this better off. And I think that's wonderful. As always, folks, we want you to know what's going on. We want you to know what is happening in this wonderful community. So feel free, please go check out atheist-community.org. You can get all the latest goings on and happenings and what's nots. And you can always send us an email at tv@atheist-community.org, folks. So I think we have had a pretty darn good time, but we are about to go party hard in the ACA Discord. So I guess we will get the heck out of here, and we'll see y'all next time, where we hope somebody will bring evidence of God. I mean, I'm not betting on it, but we'll see. See ya.
Bye bye for now.
What will it take for you to start opening your eyes, to start questioning the bullshit everyone around you buys? You think it's any of your business what goes on between my thighs? I wonder when we'll be rid of your lies.
Watch Talk Heathen live Sundays at 1 p.m. Central. Visit tiny.cc/YTTH and call into the show at 512-991-9242 or connect to the show online at tiny.cc/callth.